Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Word of the Day. I am not Pastor Matthews, and it's been a moment since I have done our Word of the Day segment, but I am so happy to be here with you today. And I want you to take a moment to truly get on through all your forms of social media and invite your sisters, your friends, your family to join us today all week, Tuesday through Friday. We will be tackling women's health issues. Today, we're going to talk about change is everywhere, menopause, the change of life. And I'm super excited about the person that we will have sharing today. But I want to read you something that I read when I was preparing for our service or preparing for our time together today. And it said this: menopause is not an end, but a beginning. It's a chance to rediscover your true self. So that's what we're going to be doing with all of our topics this week, teaching you how to rediscover your true self through all of the challenges and issues that we deal with as women. It is our goal today to help women find the strength, the resilience, and the positivity you need to navigate through the challenges of menopause. So I want to introduce our speaker today, our guest speaker. Her name is Dr. Brenda Carter Taylor. She is a women's health provider, an advocate who is committed to providing advanced medical care for women. She is board certified, and she's provided services for women in the Birmingham area for over 31 years. And she is trained in laparoscopic and robotic surgery. So let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Brenda Carter Taylor. Dr. Taylor, so good to have you today. And I'm super excited about you sharing with us. Welcome to our platform today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. And welcome. Just go ahead and get started. I know it's probably lunch break, for a lot of people. So I'm going to go ahead, Pastor Jay, and just share my screen. And
Okay.
I hope Oscar showed me how to do this the right way. Okay.
I hope so too. While you're preparing for that, Dr. Taylor, I do want to give ladies the opportunity. Ladies, all week we're going to be doing gas card giveaways in honor of Mother's Day. So every day, please make sure you take a moment to register. And you can do so by texting the word virtuous, VIRTUOUS, to 94000. And at the end or sometime during the show, we're going to give away $50 gas card giveaways all week long. So ladies, take a moment to do that. Virtuous to 94000. Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
All right. So I should be sharing my screen, Oscar. I have shared it.
No, he's not. He's telling me he doesn't see the share just yet.
Okay. Let's try it this way. Yeah, let's see. I think I got it. Can you see it now?
Okay. I don't see it. Oscar, you'll have to text me and let me know. He says yes. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
We're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so today, ladies, we're going to talk about menopause and hormones. As Pastor Jay said, I'm Brenda Taylor. I've been practicing for really now over 34 years in Birmingham. I'm a board certified obstetrician gynecologist. I am married to Robert Taylor, and we have raised two children, Christopher Taylor and Myra Taylor Tompkins. Today, we are going to talk about change. Change is everywhere. In particular, we're going to talk about menopause, the change of life. So, what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to live. And please bear with me. I am so sorry. I am really terribly sorry, y'all, but this is the O slide, so I'm not sure where my other presentation went, but you know what? We're just gonna keep going in Jesus' name, okay? So I had prepared another slide that had a picture in it, so I'm not sure where it went. So I'm gonna keep going. So change is everything. So again, menopause, the change of life. Basically, our objective for today is to make sure that if you're participating in this program, that you have knowledge about menopause, and this knowledge increases your decision making. Today, we want you to recognize menopause, of what it is and what are some of the options for treatment. I want you to understand hormonal replacement therapy and some of the alternatives as well. I want to talk a little bit about the management of hot flashes, the management of vaginal dryness, and also the management of decreased libido, which is sex drive. For women, women are in the menopausal state more than 1/3 of their lives. So, if you take that 1/3, the average age of menopause onset is the age of 51. So, between the ages of 40, 50, and 60, some of the hallmark symptoms that we see related to menopause includes hot flashes and, of course, night sweats. 82 is actually the medium life expectancy for women. So between the ages of 70, 80, and 90, we start to see other symptoms that include genital urinary symptoms as well. So, what about menopause? So, again, we stated that menopause actually occurs at about the age of 51. In the year 2023, in the United States of America, approximately 6,000 women reach menopause every day. So, every day our society is changing because women are entering that menopause. In 2024, this year, it is estimated that 63 million women in the United States will be 50 and older, and therefore they are at risk for menopause and all of the consequences related to that. But regardless of the menopausal status, women can experience these symptoms in varying amounts, meaning some women have hot flashes that may last for a few months, and then some women have hot flashes that can last up to years. So each woman's journey is different. So we say vasomotor symptoms, but the word that we use clinically, vasomotor symptoms, generally refer to the word hot flashes or flushes or night sweats, or as my patients say, I have my own internal heater. So that means they are walking around and they can get hot at any moment. So hot flashes are actually experienced by the majority of women during menopause. So it's the most common symptom that we see. About 80% of women have this experience. So 8 out of 10 women will have hot flashes. The median time that most women will experience hot flashes, if not treated, is about 7.4 years. So this means that the majority of menopausal women with hot flashes in the United States, unfortunately, 70% of those women are untreated.
Wow.
Hot flashes. The question is does it impact our quality of life? And the answer is absolutely it does. Sweating during the night impacts our sleep. So this causes sleep disturbances, which leads to fatigue and cognitive impairment. The common word for that is brain fog. So if you're not sleeping well, you don't get into REM sleep, that good deep sleep that makes you feel rested. And therefore, the next day, your ability to have good, intelligent conversations and to correlate your world system declines. 74% of menopausal women with hot flashes say, I have problems sleeping. So that's one of the second complaints is difficulty sleeping. 26% of women experience sleep difficulties that not only makes them feel as if they're not sleeping well, but it carries over into the next day and it impacts their ability to function in the world. So, what are some of the barriers to treatment for hot flashes? And really, we find it's two. One is a clinical barrier. That means who are you asking the question? So you may be speaking to your internist. Well, that internist may lack the knowledge about menopause. They may lack the knowledge on how to manage menopause. What are some of the hormonal therapy treatments. So you want to make sure you're posing the question to the right person. And because those providers also may not have a really good understanding of some of the menopause related consequences. So if you can, always try to pose the questions about menopause to your gynecologist who specializes in that area. We also find that some of the barriers is actually the patient themselves, because sometimes patients just lack the knowledge about menopause. They may fear some of the treatment options, the side effects of hormones. Notoriously, the greatest fear will always be, will I gain weight? And then we also have a fear of cancers like breast cancer. And some women, because of lack of knowledge, have access to fewer treatment options and may be limited to just use of over-the-counter products as well. Well, how did that come about? Well, in 1991, there was a women's health initiative that shared information about hormones and their impact on healthcare. So in healthcare, it created for us a clinical dilemma, because after this announcement to the public, patients had a lot of fear about hormonal replacement. There was a lot of misinformation about treatment options, causes, consequences of hormonal replacement. And unfortunately, in practices, oftentimes patients are relegated to a 15-minute encounter with their provider. So doctors may not have the time to really educate related to hormonal replacement, both the pros and the cons. And that can sometimes cause a dilemma in healthcare. So, what happened after this announcement about hormones? Well, initially, hormones were all synthetic, and these hormones were taken by women. But once the Women's Health Initiative shared with the community the concerns, we noticed that there was a big decline in the use of hormonal replacement. That's our older synthetic medications. But we noticed at the same time, there was a greater demand for what was called bioidentical hormones. And so the industry marketed that product as natural. Of course, the FDA got involved and made them take that word natural off the hormones, because all chemical medicines are synthetic. That means that they're made in a lab. But with the bioidentical hormones, they are designed to mimic what the body normally produces. So if our ovaries produce estradiol, estradiol is the chemical. It is synthetic, but it's called bioidentical because it mimics what our organs normally produce. So, with hormonal replacement, oftentimes we have to look at, well, what is the risk and what is the benefit? Of course, some of the risk was increased risk of uterine and breast cancer that was initially noted when only estrogen products were used for hormonal treatment. But we later learned that by adding in the second hormone, progesterone, we greatly reduced the incidence of breast cancer and also uterine cancer. We did recognize that there were some benefits of hormonal replacement. One, it decreases the risk of osteoporosis, so it aids in our bone health. Two, it reduces the risk of colon cancer by 30%. And lastly, and most impactful, is that it decreased heart disease. We call that cardiovascular disease. We know that 60% of women will die because of heart disease. So one of the benefits of hormonal replacement is the impact that it has on decreasing heart disease. Hormone therapy is also important with our bones and with our joints. We know empirically that hormonal therapy effectively prevents postmenopausal osteoporosis. Of course, for most women, the concern is the change in posture, the little hump in the back. But for us as clinicians, we are happy about this because we know that it significantly reduces the risk of hip fractures by over 30%. Why is this important? Because once we reach 60, our vision changes, our dexterity changes, so the likelihood of a fall is a lot higher. And we know that a fall has a mortality rate. About 30% of women that fall and break a hip never come out of the hospital. So protection of the bones is important as well. But in addition to that, hormonal therapy also was shown to have women would have a little bit less joint pain and a little bit of stiffness as well. So, what is the implications of hormonal replacement therapy in cancer? Because that's the concern of most women. Once we reach 50, for most women, once we reach 50, the number one cause cancer death cause is actually lung cancer. Most women
Wow.
think it's breast, but it's actually lung. So, lung cancer is diagnosed most frequently in women over 50. And part of that is we've come a long way, baby. So, with marketing of the Virginia Slim, the behaviors of women changed 30, 40 years ago. And as a result of that, we're seeing the consequences of that now through the evidence of more lung cancer. The second cancer incidence is actually breast, and most of us are very much aware of that. And then thirdly is colon cancer. Colon cancer migrated from number 20 all the way up to number 3 once you reach 50. And so it is important to make sure that you're having your colon cancer surveillance. We now recommend colonoscopy starting at age 45 versus 50. If you opt for the colonoscopy, of course, that should be done as far as just surveillance for cancer every 10 years, unless you're told otherwise based upon your history. Or there's now the Cologuard, which is an easy card that's sent to your home that screens for colon cancer. But the Cologuard, you want to do that every 3 years. So colonoscopy every 10, Cologuard every 3. We also noticed some observational evidence that showed that the hormonal replacement really does not impact the risk of breast cancer. As we become more educated, we know that there's also a genetic component to breast cancer. And sometimes the word runs in my family and genetic is thought to be the same, but it's not the same. So you can have family members that have a diagnosis that are in your family, but you may not be genetically predisposed to develop breast cancer. So with the advent of genetic screening, we can predict better the risk of those that may have family members that have that diagnosis. Hormonal replacement did not really have any effect on lung cancer. That was neutral because that, of course, is based upon the behavior of the woman and the consequences of that behavior. And then lastly, again, that 30% reduction in colon cancer incident was noted. So we also stated that we have the hot flashes at the beginning, that's the hallmark symptom, but then toward the end, as we age between 70s and 80s, we'll notice genitourinary symptoms of menopause. So the question oftentimes is, well, what is that? Well, that's the changes that also occur in the vagina and also with the bladder as well. When the vagina and the bladder does not have access to estrogen, there's some physical changes that occur as a result of that. Some of the symptoms that are oftentimes noted as a result of the lack of estrogen in those areas include vaginal dryness, itching, burning, vaginal discharge, and of course the notorious painful sex. So those are related to the vagina and the bladder. The bladder, sometimes we will see frequent urination or burning with urination, and also overactive bladder. You know, that gotta go, run to the bathroom. I hope I can get there in time. So all of those are oftentimes overcome by treatment because those are a result of lack of estrogens in the vagina and the bladder. So some of the treatments for that does include vaginal estrogen creams, which are by prescription, and that's just estrogen that's localized in the vagina. We also have over-the-counter products such as vaginal moisturizers and lubricants, and also oral medications for the overactive bladder as well. Um, Last but not least is notorious decreased libido. And of course, decreased libido means just decreased sex drive. That is thought to be twofold. One is just lowering of the hormone called testosterone. We have ovaries, and our ovaries actually produce three hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and a little bit of testosterone. So as we age, and once the ovaries stop functioning, the first hormone that declines is the estrogen, which is why we see the hot flashes, the night sweats. Then we see the lowering of the progesterone, which is where the insomnia comes into play. And then lastly is the testosterone, which is related to our sex drive. Oftentimes, with the vagina too, the decreased libido can be just secondary to just the lack of the estrogens in the vagina that leads to discomfort with intercourse. And then that discomfort with intercourse, because of the vagina and bladder, that discomfort causes a person to not be interested as well. We are going to also now entertain questions. So I would like to stop sharing my screen if that is okay, because I want to save time. That was a general overview. I did have a picture of the uterus and the ovaries, but I think I was in the wrong PowerPoint. I had changed it today and I probably flipped them out. Oh, well, technology. But just be aware that, our ovaries produce the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and a little bit of testosterone. When we're born, we have all the eggs we're going to have in our lifetime. Up until about age 12, we call that our premenstrual time period, which means when the ovaries are not really functioning, they're there, they're prepared, and that's called the premenstrual time. Then once you menstruate, we call that the menstrual phase, which is where you're actually having cycles as a reflection of the fact that you're ovulating, producing eggs. And then you have the third and final phase, which is the menopausal time period, which is when the ovaries no longer function, you're no longer producing eggs, and therefore you no longer have cycles, and you're considered menopausal. So from a reproductive point of view, as women, we're either premenstrual, that's the phase, usually birth to 12 years. We're menstrual, from 12 to average age, as we said, 51. That's the menstrual phase. And then from 51 on until the average lifespan of 84, 82, we're then postmenopausal. So postmenopausal or menopausal is a phase that you're in for years, although oftentimes we equate that to symptoms. So we'll say I'm menopausal because I'm having hot flashes, but you're really menopausal for that whole time period, but you may be only symptomatic, as we said, for 0 to 7 years. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and entertain some questions, Pastor Jay.
Okay, so if you have questions, you can type them in. They're going to appear on the screen, and then we will allow Dr. Taylor to answer those questions. I've got a couple that I did my research on, so I want to ask you. Number one, what is the youngest age of menopause? What is the youngest age?
Yes. So we say menopause normally would be between 45 and 55. So that's the range, with the average age of being 50 to 52. So by 50 to 52, half of women have gone through menopause, the other half haven't. We consider you what we would call premature menopause if you have the onset of menopause before the age of 45. And there's some women that can experience that because of some genetic disorders that makes the ovaries not work or not function. But 45 to 55 is the range, with 51 being the average.
Okay, and we have a question. How does menopause affect fibroids?
And menopause affects fibroids. Fibroids are tumors that grow within the uterus. 80% of women have fibroids to some extent or other, although typically African American women's fibroids typically grow larger and faster. But
Wow.
all women have fibroids, 8 out of 10 women to some degree or other. And with fibroids growth is impacted by estrogens. So typically, if you have fibroids, we say if you have fibroids, usually they're going to double in size in about 3 to 5 years. So that's kind of how we gauge the normal growth of fibroids. But once you become menopausal and the estrogens are no longer in play because your ovaries are not working anymore, they don't have the hormones to stimulate the growth, then we know that 50% of fibroids will reduce by half, okay, in size by the time you're menopausal. So during the menopausal time period, we would expect fibroids not to grow. We know that, again, 1 out of 100, we say fibroids can undergo what we call sarcomatous changes, which is cancerous changes, because it is a tumor. So oftentimes, if we have women that have fibroids in place by the time they're menopausal. We use the ultrasound to measure the growth of the fibroids because we want them not to grow. If fibroids grow during the menopausal time period, the risk of sarcomatous or cancerous changes is higher, and we would recommend a surgical intervention at that time. But menopause should cause the cessation of growth of fibroids.
Okay. I have a question. If you've had polyps in the past, is it wise to do the home colonoscopy test?
Yes. So the colonoscopy was the hallmark. And as the viewer said, you could actually see polyps. The Cologuard is a good screening test. It's good. It will absolutely tell you you have cancer. But our goal, of course, is predictive. We want prevention. So right now, the sensitivity of the Cologuard is not quite as high as the colonoscopy. So you could have a polyp and your Cologuard could not pick it up. Whereas if you do the colonoscopy, where you have a visual inspection of the colon, the goal is to recognize the polyp and, of course, remove it before it can turn into cancer. So I try to share with my patients, do the colonoscopy at least once, at least for now, until the Cologuard's sensitivity is better. I would do the Cologuard first, and then if you're good, go with the Cologuard every 3 years after that. But if you have risks such as polyps or family history, I would steer you more toward the colonoscopy because you get a higher sensitivity with that test.
Yeah, and I want to encourage everyone, including myself, to make sure we do the colonoscopy because my doctor was sharing with me the last time I went, it is 100% preventable. You
Mhm.
know, colon cancer is 100% preventable if you do the test and it's caught in time. So that was one of the things he was encouraging me.
Yeah.
That's something that you can do. Some things, it's growing before you even find out about it. It's been there and you have those issues, but that's one thing that is 100% preventable. So
Yes.
that's something we can do. The questions are coming so fast, Dr. Taylor. Someone wanted us to discuss hair loss due to menopause.
Yes, and that is twofold. Some hair loss, and probably the majority of hair loss, is genetic. That's called we call it male pattern baldness. So sometimes you can look at your family, and if your dad's bald or your uncles are bald, it may be you may be genetically predisposed to have more thinning in the top of your head, and that's just purely based on genetics. Um,
Okay.
the other is sometimes hormonal because, again, as we stressors make us lose our hair. So the most vulnerable cells are our hair cells in our gut. So if you have an illness or if you're stressed, about 3 months later, you're going to rake through your hair and you're just going to see all this little hair coming out, from either a physical illness or a stressor. And menopause is a stressor. With the insomnia, the vaginal dryness, the sexual dysfunction, and all of those impact our hair follicles. So some of it is genetic, some of it is affective, how we feel, that is secondary to a hormonal change.
Okay.
Let
Um,
me add one more thing because women also say, well, why am I getting hair around here? And part of that too is, again, estrogens drop first. That's your hot flashes. Progesterone drops second. That's your insomnia. Can't sleep at night. And then that test. But while the estrogen and progesterone is low, your testosterone is still high because they're not occurring at the same time. So when the estrogen and progesterone is low, testosterone is still a little high, and therefore it will manifest itself, with the hair growth here, around the nipples, and etc.
okay. This is such great information, Dr. Taylor. Thank you so much. Um, what's good for hot flashes? Now, let me tell you this. I read that there are triggers that you can avoid, which is spicy foods, alcohol, caffeine, and stress. So tell me if that's true, number
True.
one.
That's
Um,
true.
okay, that is true.
Yes, those are triggers.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. So with hormonal, I think your original question was, what are some of the options for hormonal
Yes.
replacement? Yeah.
What's good for hot flashes?
Okay,
Yes.
what's good for hot flashes? So, I always try to say I start from the least and go to the best. And I will tell you, there's no reason to suffer. Okay. And women have a tendency to say, oh, I'll get better. Oh, this will get better. Oh, I can tolerate it. And I think we as African Americans tend to suffer more, because we'll take on like, oh, this is not that bad. But hot flashes are fixable. So if you want to go straight to the cuff, you can fix hot flashes. But for those that may have a more conservative approach, there are herbs that you can use, like black cohosh. Black cohosh is one of the main ingredients in estrogen and some of the over-the-counter products. But you can, or soy menopause, but you can get black cohosh just by itself now. That's kind of like the generic, so it's not very pricey. So herbs are excellent. Then, of course, you move on to the prescription hormonal replacement. It would depend upon if you have a uterus or not, if you need just the estrogen only. If you have a uterus, you're going to need to add in a combination of estrogen and progesterone. And for those that struggle with libido, where the testosterone level is low, there's Estra Test that has estrogen and testosterone. But again, if you have a uterus, you have to add in the progesterone as well. Sometimes we do just progesterone only, like micronized progesterone, because some women may not have a lot of hot flashes, but they're only struggling with sleep. And so we may only use that at night to help with sleep. So remember, we are not a cookie cutter. Not all of our journeys are the same. So it's important for the provider to hear your story, to know what your main symptoms are, and then go about addressing them, because one therapy doesn't work for all women.
Right.
Mhm.
That's great. Okay. If you no longer have a menstrual cycle, is it possible for your body to menopause early?
So that might be what we call premature menopause. That's women that may not have a cycle. They may be 35 and all of a sudden stop having cycles. So the very first thing we think is, of course, are you pregnant? So we're going to do a pregnancy test. But the second thing we do is we do hormonal testing to help us to decide if indeed you are premenopausal, meaning that I said premenopausal, premature menopause, which
Okay.
means that you've gone through menopause before the average age of 45. So there would be blood work that would need to be done to clinch the diagnosis as to why you're not having a cycle, and if it's menopause or premature menopause or not.
Okay. All right. This person says, I have used a biomedical hormone pellet before. Do
Mhm.
you offer this?
Yes, and we do in our practice. We are a group of with Ascension St. Vincent's Women Health at St. Vincent. So all of us are women in our practice. So we offer the full gamut of treatment options that include patches, pills, sprays, gels. You name it. We probably have a way to get the therapy that that patient prefers. And we do offer the BioT pellets. The benefit of that is that you receive a little bit more intensive blood work that speaks to specific hormones at a blood level. And then we use pellets to replace those levels back up to its normal dose. The historical hormones only come in 3 dosages, and basically you had to fit into one of those 3. There's no particular blood work that's drawn, whereas the pellets is I'm going to use this customized to that particular patient. And then from that customized blood work, we then offer a selection of pellets to get them up to a normal level where they feel better. Unfortunately, right now that comes with a cost. So, pellets are very high end cost. Insurances do not cover pellets, so those are self pay. And we can figure out some of the blood testing office visits to get that through the insurance carrier, but the pellets themselves by far is self-pay for now. Like bioidentical hormones and compounded products, we're hoping that eventually the system will reconcile itself, that the insurances will begin to cover pellets as well.
Okay. This person asked, does exercise and diet impact the effects of menopause? And if so, in what ways?
Yes, diet does. There's something called phytoestrogens, which are plant estrogens. So for those that may choose not to do a prescription medicine and choose a dietary approach, you just want to make sure you're choosing vegetables that are certain color palettes. So vegetables that are red, orange have more phytoestrogens, like strawberries and tomatoes and squash. So those colored vegetables, those color palettes have more phytoestrogens. Almonds will do the same, which is one of the nuts that we say that grow on the tree versus the nuts that grow on the ground, like the peanuts. So the
Oh,
nuts on the
wow.
trees are actually the better nuts, like almonds and walnuts are a lot better than what we call nuts that grow in the ground, which are really not nuts. They're really legumes, but we call them nuts. So you want to do the nuts in the tree. And then your red and yellow vegetables are very helpful from a dietary point of view for phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogen. With exercise, exercise is important. Part of that is when we exercise, we build up something called endorphins, and those endorphins make us feel better. So it impacts our affect. Because, I look at people out there running, I'm like, I don't know why they're running. I don't want to do that it's hot, but they feel good. They get this high, from running. So exercise helps with your affect and it helps you to feel better as well.
Okay, Dr. Taylor, I know we've got a lot of questions on here, but I see one that just popped up that I really want you to answer because I'm pretty sure the answer to this is no. And that's you were talking about misinformation. But this person says, I've been told that after a hysterectomy, a pap smear is not needed. Is this correct?
And actually, the answer to that is correct. Okay. So well, let me say it differently. Depends upon what kind of hysterectomy you've had.
Right. Yeah, let's say that.
What kind of hysterectomy you've had. So, historically, we remove the cervix and the uterus when we do a hysterectomy back in the day. But then there came a dispensation where women wanted their cervixes to be retained. So we would remove the uterus, tubes, and ovaries, but we would leave the cervix behind.
Right.
So if you have a supracervical hysterectomy where you still have your cervix left behind, you still need your pap smear. But if
Mhm.
the cervix has been removed, and barring any other vaginal issues, I want to put that in context because there are
Yes.
some reasons why we still do it, then in general, you don't need another pap smear. That's not to be confused with the pelvic because we equate pap and pelvic and they're not the same thing. A pap
Mhm.
is a component of the pelvic. So even though you may have had a hysterectomy, you still need a pelvic exam because we inspect the vulva, which is the outer skin. We inspect that's vulvar cancer, rectal cancer. We inspect the rectum. We look in the vagina for vaginal cancer. And as we get older, the risk of vulvar, vaginal, and rectal cancer goes up. So if you're not having that visual inspection, that diagnosis can be missed. Some women still have their ovaries left behind. The uterus may have been removed. Ovaries left behind. You need a pelvic exam just to make sure there's no masses in the ovarian area as well. So our pelvic exam screens for many things, and it's not isolated to just the pap smear, which screens for cervical cancer.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much. This is such good information. Ladies, I want to thank you all too for just joining us here. We were going to end around 12:30, but I do want to get a couple more questions in. So we're going to do it, Dr. Taylor, if you can give me another 7 minutes or so,
I
and
have
we'll end from there.
I have until 2 o'clock.
I promise you, ladies, we will not keep you on to two
Oh,
o'clock. And then
no.
I definitely want you all to join us all week because we have another dynamic speaker on tomorrow. You really don't want to miss all week. But here, let me ask you this. I needed to have an ablation due to heavy cycle and anemia. Could that contribute to my menopausal symptoms? I'm on hormonal replacement therapy, but still having symptoms.
Yes, and an ablation is designed to treat the uterus and the lining of the uterus, which is where your bleeding is coming from. So when you have an ablation, it does not impact your ovaries or your hormones at all. It is only designed to treat bleeding abnormalities. So the question, does it impact your menopause? No. It only impacts your menstrual cycle, with hopefully 75% of women after an ablation don't have a cycle, which is what we're always shooting for, but about 20% still have some bleeding. Does it impact your, I think the question is if she has had an ablation, my assumption is that blood work has already been drawn to assess if she's menopausal or not. But what we've now discovered is we don't purely treat based on blood work because you will begin to have your symptoms long before the hormone levels rise. So we now clinically treat the person, the patient, and not the blood work. So I have had patients that are still having cycles, but it may be the week of their menstrual cycle, they have hot flashes. that's fixable. So you can still implement hormonal replacement. We don't make women like when I first started practicing 35 years ago, you would have to go a whole year without a cycle before you
Wow.
would have the diagnosis of menopause and before we would begin treatment with hormonal replacement. We don't practice that way anymore. So we treat symptoms, not blood work, but we use the blood work for women that may not have a uterus that we can use to judge menstrual cycles to tell us if you're menopausal. So if you came in, you had had a hysterectomy, having hot flashes, am I menopausal? I don't know, but we can do some blood work to help us to delineate if you are or not. And even if the blood work doesn't show that you are, we can still fix your problems. We can still treat you.
Okay. Another question. Does the lack of estrogen have a direct or indirect effect on your bone health?
And the answer is it absolutely has a direct, it impacts your bones. And most importantly, we as African Americans do have denser bones. That's genetic, but we still
Mhm.
develop osteopenia and osteoporosis. We don't drink a lot of dairy products, so we don't get the vitamin D. We don't have sun exposure for our vitamin D. So once we enter that menopausal time period, we had a lot of reserve when we were older, but then once you get to menopause, you have no reserve. So we can still develop osteopenia, osteoporosis. Again, the risk of that is don't fall and break a hip. 30% of women that fall and break a hip never come out of the hospital. It's a high mortality rate. Don't be vain. Once we reach 60, as I am over 60, our vision changes, our dexterity changes. Hold on as you walk down to not fall. So the answer is that hormonal replacement, one of the benefits is that it protects your bones from osteoporosis, which reduces your risk of a fall and the death associated with that.
So are you saying then we need to take off our high heels at a certain age? I mean, I love my heels, Dr. Taylor. I have to have my heels.
I do too. I walk, but we just learn to sway, and then you just hold on to the banister as you're swaying. So you just change the way you walk, and you do it, carefully, but you can still wear your heels. Sometimes you will notice as you get older and the bones are thinner, if you go from low heels to high heels, you're more likely to have stress fractures because bones get thinner. So sometimes you'll notice at the very top of your foot, it's like, oh, this feels tender in here. And those
Right.
oftentimes little stress fractures from going from a low to a high angle with your heel, it fixes itself. But that I would say that's probably the only challenge with high heels is sometimes stress fractures on the tops of your feet.
Okay. Let me give you another question. How can you decrease the frequency in urination during the postmenopause phase?
And that was the estrogen creams that we talked about. So if that's the hallmark symptom, usually for women between 70, 70, 80, and 90, it's more likely to happen, but we can see it even earlier. The estrogen vaginal cream is very helpful with that. 1/3 of your bladder is made healthy from the estrogens, so that overactive bladder symptoms can sometimes be overcome just with estrogen vaginal cream. On occasion, it's some, but it doesn't do the trick. So there's some patients that need a dual treatment, both the estrogen along with oral medications that impact the detrusor muscles, the muscles inside of the bladder, because they'll spasm and you'll feel like, oh, I got to go. And you go and it's like drops. So it helps to relax the muscles in the bladder as well. But the estrogen cream is extremely helpful with that too.
And if we're having trouble sleeping, what can we do about that?
And oftentimes with sleeping, if that's the primary complaint, meaning the hot flashes, the vagina is not an issue, but it's more like I just can't sleep at night. From a hormonal point of view, we would recommend micronized progesterone. And micronized progesterone you would take at night, and that helps with insomnia, with sleep. Sometimes it's not hormonal, it is your personality. Some people are ruminators, like their brain just keeps going and going. Their tasks, they're checking off in their head. So some of it may be learning behaviors for what I call a wind down before you go to bed, and developing a training for sleep, because sleep is a learned behavior. So if you start putting into place some things that you do as a habit, it basically tells your body what to do. But we're going 100 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden you jump in the bed, and then you want that brain to go to zero. your brain's not going to cooperate with that. It's going to take a while for it to calm down. So orchestrating your day, balancing your day, and prepping for sleep as you prep for anything else in your life.
I'm definitely guilty. So thank you so much. I'm going to ask you two more questions. What can I do to improve mood swings from menopause?
Yes. And mood swings can be one of two. Again, there could be something that is affective, has nothing to do with hormones. Our brain is an organ. Our brain produces hormones as well, serotonin and some other hormones that affects our affect, how we feel. And the brain was kind of off limit for years and years. Just women were hysterical. We cry a lot, and nobody really was thinking of the brain as an organ. But now that we know it is an organ and it does have hormones that impact our affect, how we feel, sometimes it is a chemical deficit in the brain that is affecting your affect. So our
Wow.
affect is strictly speaking, it's a chemical reaction. Okay. And sometimes we exhaust all of those chemicals because we throw so much on ourselves during the day and our brains are going and we have feelings going all kinds of ways that we deplete those chemicals. And when those chemicals are depleted, the effect of that is how it impacts our affect, how we feel. So sometimes if your serotonin is really low, you may need a medication that enables your body to reuptake that quicker so that you have more serotonin in your head, because that's how you interpret how you feel. So some of it is affective, how you feel. Okay. Some of it is effective because, again, if you're not sleeping well at night, you're not getting into good REM sleep during the day, you're in a fog and you're just tired all the time, that can affect your affect as well. And that's more positional versus chemical.
That was good. Great answer. Last question that I'd like for you to answer today. And then, ladies, hang on because we're going to do the giveaways immediately following this. And then I want to tell you what we'll talk about tomorrow. But Dr. Taylor, this has been phenomenal.
Oh,
Thank you so much. I feel like we can listen to you for a couple hours, really. But I told you I was going to ask you this question, and I want to ask you now: is life better after menopause? We're going to end with that question: is life better? Because all of the things you talked about today, I'm not so sure. But
And I
please
think the answer
answer.
to that is absolutely yes. I mean, we know that how God created us. He created us as a spirit, a soul, and a body. And as long as we are in line with the way He has ordered our environment and understand. There's a time for everything. Okay. So, what oftentimes happen, if there's a time to plant, there's a time for harvest. So, our life is a journey. Okay. And so, if everybody can take that facet of their journey, enjoy it as it is, and then move on to the next journey, oftentimes your perception of life is good. But if I am 65, but I really want to be 40. Okay. And so I now take my position as I physically am and I try to put it in a space, of a 40-year-old, then sometimes that doesn't fit and that leads to disappointment. So, like my husband and I, we love to travel. There was a time when we traveled, we rode bikes, like we would rent bikes and ride bikes. As we've aged, we still want to see the city, but we change. We still see the city, but we ride a golf court. Okay. So that means we have learned to make an adjustment
Right.
for our age. Or now we have electric bikes. So people see us riding through the neighborhood and we pedaling, but they don't know it's electric. Okay. So we still get to see the environment. So I think part of it is making adjustments in your life, owning who you are, where you are. God created this as a wonderful journey, and the journey of menopause should be great. For most of us, our careers are ending. Hopefully, your children are leaving the nest. You get a good raise when that happens. You get to enjoy life. You get to enjoy some of the habits. So I do think the menopausal time period should be a good time. I think that if you make the adjustments, don't have really high expectations, and media is harsh. It would make a 65-year-old think that her sexual habits should be the same as a 35-year-old. And it will make you have a sense that you're missing something. But as long as you, if you're married and you and your partner are making those adjustments at the same rate sexually, it still becomes a very enjoyable phase of your life. So I think enjoying where you are, appreciating where you are, makes menopause great. But most importantly, for us as women, we don't have to suffer. The medicines are out there. They can make you feel better. Talk to your provider. Make sure you reduce any misinformation, and then you can make the right decision about what's the best treatment option for yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. We've got to have you back. This was absolutely wonderful. Thank you
You're
so, so
welcome.
much.
No,
Now,
thank you.
listen, ladies. No, the pleasure was all ours. I promise you. Please stay connected for a few more minutes. I'll talk to you for just a little bit after we're off live. But I want to let you know tomorrow, Wednesday, May 8th, we will have Dr. Leisha Ellis Cox, and she's going to talk about emotions. Emotions. It's a roller coaster ride. So she's going to deal with how the changes of life impact our emotions. Wonderful, wonderful speaker. So I think you're going to enjoy tomorrow's session. So please, ladies, tune in, tell somebody about how much you enjoyed today, and please make sure they join us tomorrow. So now, Dr. Taylor, I'm going to do some giveaways. Oscar, are you ready to tell me these numbers? Okay. The first number generated is the number 69. So can you put on the screen who's our first winner? That number 69. And while he's doing that, I'm going to generate another number. Number 81.
Ooh.
Oh, you can talk to us if that's easier. We've got 69 and we've got 81. I'm going to do another one. 63. Wow, the numbers are high this time. 69, 81, and 63. Are you keeping up with me? I don't want to miss somebody.
I do see some names down here. I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah. Congratulations, Phyllis Jones. Phyllis Jones, you're a winner. And you can contact the ministry to pick up your $50 gas card giveaway. Congratulations, Lasharia Ferrier. You are a winner as well. Okay. And the last one was 63. So I'm going to do two more. 75. And the last one today is 22. Oh, Cherie Perkins, congratulations. You are a winner today. And I think you're going to give me one more. They're saying, yes, please have Dr. Taylor again.
Thank you.
We've got one more. Once he gives us his last winner, then we will end our session for today, but make sure you join us tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we have Victoria Brasher and Dakota Wyatt that's going to join us to talk about hypertension and heart disease, some of our biggest threats. And then Friday, we will wrap it up with Dr. Lindsay Harris, who's going to talk about what happens next, maternal health mortality. So we've got great, great subjects all week. Thank you all so much. Congratulations to all of our winners. That last winner was Shirley Miller. So congratulations to Shirley Miller. Thank you all so much. You can contact us at 425-4735, and we will get with you on how to pick up your gift card. Thank you so much again, Dr. Taylor. We love you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you. This was absolutely wonderful. Guys, be blessed, and we will see you all tomorrow.